dynasty in 1557. Portugal paid an annual rent and administered the territory under Chinese sovereignty up until 1887. Portugal later gained perpetual colonial rights in the Sino-Portuguese Treaty of Peking. The colony remained under Portuguese rule until 1999, when it was transferred to China. Macau is a special administrative region of China, which maintains separate governing and economic systems from those of mainland China under the principle of one country, two systems. The unique blend of Portuguese and Chinese architecture in the city's historic center led to its inscription on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2005. Originally a sparsely populated collection of coastal islands, Macau, often referred to as the Las Vegas of the East, has become a major resort city and a top destination for gambling tourism, with a gambling industry 7 times larger than that of Las Vegas. The city has one of the highest per capita incomes in the world, and its GDP per capita by purchasing power parity is one of the highest in the world. It has a very high Human Development Index, as calculated by the Macau government, and the 4th highest life expectancy in the world. The territory is highly urbanized. 2/3 of the total land area is built on land reclaimed from the sea. Etymology — the first known written record of the name Macau, rendered as ya, Amagang — is found in a letter dated the 20th of November 1555. The local inhabitants believed that the sea goddess Matsu, alternatively called Ama, had blessed and protected the harbor and called the waters around Ama Temple using her name. When Portuguese explorers first arrived in the area and asked for the place name, the locals thought they were asking about the temple and told them it was Makok. The earliest Portuguese spelling for this was Amacau. Multiple variations were used until Amacau, Amacau and Macau. Macau became common during the 17th century. The 1911 reform of Portuguese orthography standardized the spelling Macau. However, the use of Macau persisted in English and other European languages. The Macau Peninsula had many names in Chinese, including Jingao, Hojing, and Hojingao. The islands Per, Kuln, and Henkin were collectively called Shiziman. These names would later become Ayamun, Umun in Cantonese and translating as Bay Gate or Port Gate, to refer to the whole territory. History — During the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, the region was under the jurisdiction of Paniu County, Nanhai Prefecture of the province of Guangdong. The region is first known to have been settled during the Han dynasty. It was administratively part of Dongguan Prefecture in the Jin dynasty, 266 to 420 AD, and alternated under the control of Nanhai and Dongguan in later dynasties. In 1152, during the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279 AD, it was under the jurisdiction of the new Xiangshan County. In 1277, approximately 50,000 refugees fleeing the Mongol conquest of China settled in the coastal area. Macau did not develop as a major settlement until the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century. The first European visitor to reach China by sea was the explorer Jorge Alves, who arrived in 1513. Merchants first established a trading post in Hong Kong waters at Tamao, present-day Tunman, beginning regular trade with nearby settlements in southern China. Military clashes between the Ming and Portuguese navies followed the expulsion of the Tamao traders in 1521. Despite the trade ban, Portuguese merchants continued to attempt to settle on other parts of the Pearl River estuary, finally settling on Macau in their first attempts at obtaining trading posts by force. The Portuguese were defeated by the Ming Chinese at the Battle of Tunman in Tamao, or Tunman, in 1521, where the Portuguese lost 2 ships, the Battle of Singkuan in Lantor Island where the Portuguese also lost 2 ships, in Shuangyu in 1548, where several Portuguese were captured, and near the Dongshan Peninsula in 1549, where 2 Portuguese junks and Galiote Pereira were captured. During these battles the Ming Chinese captured weapons from the defeated Portuguese which they then reverse-engineered and mass-produced in China, such as matchlock musket arquebuses which they named bird guns and breech-loading swivel guns which they named as Phalangi, Frankish, Canon because the Portuguese were known to the Chinese under the name of Franks at this time. The Portuguese later returned to China peacefully and presented themselves under the name Portuguese instead of Franks in the Luso-Chinese Agreement, 1554, and rented Macau as a trading post from China by paying annual lease of hundreds of silvertals to Ming China. Luso-Canton trade relations were formally re-established in 1554 and Portugal soon after acquired a permanent lease from Macau in 1557, agreeing to pay 500 tals of silver as annual land rent. The initially small population of Portuguese merchants rapidly became a growing city. The Roman Catholic Diocese of Macau was created in 1576, and by 1583, the Senate had been established to handle municipal affairs for the growing settlement. Macau was at the peak of its prosperity as a major interport during the late 16th century, providing a crucial connection in exporting Chinese silk to Japan during the Nanban trade period. Although the Portuguese were initially prohibited from fortifying Macau or stockpiling weapons, the Fortaleza do Monte was constructed in response to frequent Dutch naval incursions. The Dutch attempted to take the city in the 1622 Battle of Macau, but were repelled successfully by the Portuguese. Macau entered a period of decline in the 1640s following a series of catastrophic events for the burgeoning colony. Portuguese access to trade routes was irreparably severed when Japan halted trade in 1639. Portugal revolted against Spain in 1640, and Malacca fell to the Dutch in 1641. Maritime trade with China was banned in 1644 following the Qing conquest under the Hajian policies and limited only to Macau on a lesser scale, while the new dynasty focused on eliminating surviving Ming loyalists. While the Kangxi Emperor lifted the prohibition in 1684, China again restricted trade under the Canton system in 1757. Foreign ships were required to first stop at Macau before further proceeding to Canton. Qing authorities exercised a much greater role in governing the territory during this period. Chinese residents were subject to Qing courts and new construction had to be approved by the resident mandarin beginning in the 1740s. As the opium trade became more lucrative during the 18th century, Macau again became an important stopping point en route to China. Following the First Opium War and the establishment of Hong Kong, Macau lost its role as a major port. Firecracker and incense production, as well as tea and tobacco processing, were vital industries in the colony during this time. Portugal was able to capitalize on China's post-war weakness and assert its sovereignty. The governor of Macau began refusing to pay China annual land rent for the colony in the 1840s, and annexed Pu and Kuln, in 1851 and 1864 respectively. Portugal also occupied nearby Leipu and Montana, but these would be returned to China by 1887, when perpetual occupation rights over Macau were formalized in the Sino-Portuguese Treaty of Peking. This agreement also prohibited Portugal from ceding Macau without Chinese approval. Despite occasional conflict between Cantonese authorities and the colonial government, Macau's status remained unchanged through the republican revolutions of both Portugal in 1910 and China in 1911. The Kuomintang further affirmed Portuguese jurisdiction in Macau when the Treaty of Peking was renegotiated in 1928. During the Second World War, the Empire of Japan did not occupy the colony and generally respected Portuguese neutrality in Macau. However, after Japanese troops captured a British cargo ship in Macau waters in 1943, Japan installed a group of government advisors as an alternative to military occupation. The territory largely avoided military action during the war except in 1945, when the United States ordered air raids on Macau after learning that the colonial government was preparing to sell aviation fuel to Japan. Portugal was later given over $20 million in compensation for the damage in 1950. Refugees from mainland China swelled the population as they fled from the Chinese Civil War. Access to a large workforce enabled Macau's economy to grow as the colony expanded its clothing and textiles manufacturing industry, developed its tourism industry, and legalized casino gaming. However, At the height of the Cultural Revolution, residents dissatisfied with the colonial administration rioted in the 1966 12-3 incident, in which 8 people were killed and over 200 were injured. Portugal lost full control over the colony afterwards, and agreed to cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party in exchange for continued administration of Macau. Following the 1974 Carnation Revolution, Portugal formally relinquished Macau as an overseas province and acknowledged it as a Chinese territory under Portuguese administration. After China first concluded arrangements on Hong Kong's future with the United Kingdom, it entered negotiations with Portugal over Macau in 1986. They were concluded with the signing of the 1987 Joint Declaration on the Question of Macau, in which Portugal agreed to transfer the colony in 1999 and China would guarantee Macau's political and economic systems for 50 years after the transfer. In the waning years of colonial rule, Macau rapidly urbanized and constructed large-scale infrastructure projects, including the Macau International Airport and a new container port. Macau was transferred to China on the 20th of December 1999, after 442 years of Portuguese rule. Following the transfer, Macau liberalized its casino industry, which previously operated under a government-licensed monopoly, to allow foreign investors, starting a new period of economic development. The regional economy grew by a double-digit annual growth rate from 2002 to 2014, making Macau one of the richest economies in the world on a per capita basis. Political debates have centered on the region's jurisdictional independence and the central government's adherence of one country, two systems. While issues such as national security legislation have been controversial, Macau's residents generally have high levels of trust in the government. Government and politics. Macau is a special administrative region of China, with executive, legislative, and judicial powers devolved from the national government. The Sino-Portuguese Joint Declaration provided for economic and administrative continuity through the transfer of sovereignty, resulting in an executive-led governing system largely inherited from the territory's history as a Portuguese colony. Under these terms and the one country, two systems principle, the basic law of Macau is the regional constitution. Because negotiations for the Joint Declaration and Basic Law began after transitional arrangements for Hong Kong were made, Macau's structure of government is very similar to Hong Kong's. The regional government is composed of 3 branches: executive. The chief executive is responsible for enforcing regional law, can force reconsideration of legislation, and appoints executive council members, a portion of the legislature, and principal officials. Acting with the executive council, the chief executive can propose new bills, issue subordinate legislation, and has authority to dissolve the legislature. The unicameral legislative assembly enacts regional law, approves budgets, and has the power to impeach a sitting chief executive. Judiciary. The Court of Final Appeal and lower courts, whose judges are appointed by the chief executive on the advice of a recommendation commission, interpret laws and overturn those inconsistent with the basic law. The chief executive is the head of government, and serves for a maximum of 2 5-year terms. The State Council, led by the Premier of China, appoints the chief executive after nomination by the election committee, which is composed of 400 business, community, and government leaders. The Legislative Assembly has 33 members, each serving a 4-year term. 14 are directly elected, 12 indirectly elected, and 7 appointed by the chief executive. Indirectly elected assemblymen are selected from a limited electorates representing sectors of the economy or special interest groups. All directly elected members are chosen with proportional representation. 12 political parties had representatives elected to the Legislative Assembly in the 2017 election. These parties have aligned themselves into 2 ideological groups: the pro-establishment, the current government, and pro-democracy camps. Macau is represented in the National People's Congress by 12 deputies chosen through an electoral college, and 29 delegates in the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference appointed by the central government. Chinese national law does not generally apply in the region. and Macau is treated as a separate jurisdiction. Its judicial system is based on Portuguese civil law, continuing the legal tradition established during colonial rule. Interpretative and amending power over the basic law and jurisdiction over acts of state lie with the central authority, however, making regional courts ultimately subordinate to the mainland's socialist civil law system. Decisions made by the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress can also override territorial judicial processes. In 2021, after similar actions were taken in Hong Kong following the protests associated with the Anti-Extradition Law Amendment Bill movement, 21 candidates running for office in the territorial elections were disqualified as a result of allegedly failing to support the Basic Law, although no specific violations were noted by the territory's Electoral Commission. The territory's jurisdictional independence is most apparent in its immigration and taxation policies. The Identification Department issues passports for permanent residents which differ from those issued by the mainland or Hong Kong, and the region maintains a regulated border with the rest of the country. All travelers between Macau and China and Hong Kong must pass border controls, regardless of nationality. Chinese citizens resident in mainland China do not have the right of abode in Macau and are subject to immigration controls. Public finances are handled separately from the national government, and taxes levied in Macau do not fund the central authority. The Macau garrison is responsible for the region's defense. Although the chairman of the Central Military Commission is Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the regional government may request assistance from the garrison. Macau residents are not required to perform military service, and the law also has no provision for local enlistment, so its defense force is composed entirely of non-residents. The State Council and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs handle diplomatic matters, but Macau retains the ability to maintain separate economic and cultural relations with foreign nations. The territory negotiates its own trade agreements and actively participates in supranational organizations, including agencies of the World Trade Organization and United Nations. The regional government maintains trade offices in Greater China and other nations. Lusophonia membership. Macau is not a member of the Community of Portuguese-language countries, despite Portuguese being one of its official languages. This is due to it not being a sovereign nation, but a subnational division of China. In 2006, during the second ministerial meeting between China and Portuguese-speaking countries, the CPLP Executive Secretary and Deputy Ambassador Tade Soares invited the Chief Executive of the Government of the Macau Special Administrative Region, Edmund Ho, to request the Associate Observer status for Macau. The government of Macau has yet to make this request. In 2016, Murad Mouragi, then Executive Secretary of CPLP, said in an interview that Macau's membership is a complicated question, since like the Galicia region in Spain, it is not an independent country, but only a part of China. However, the Instituto Internacional de Macau, and the University of São José are consultative observers of the CPLP administrative divisions. The territory is divided into 7 parishes: Cotai, a major area developed on reclaimed land between Pu and Kuln, and areas of the Macau New Urban Zone do not have defined parishes. Historically, the parishes belonged to one of 2 municipalities, the Municipality of Macau or the Municipality of Ilhas, that were responsible for administering municipal services. The municipalities were abolished in 2001 and superseded by the Civic and Municipal Affairs Bureau in providing local services. Geography. Macau is located on China's southern coast, 60 kilometers, 37 miles, west of Hong Kong, on the western side of the Pearl River estuary. It is surrounded by the South China Sea in the east and south, and neighbors the Guangdong city of Zhuhai to the west and north. The territory consists of Macau Peninsula, Pu, and Kuln, a 1 square kilometer, 0.39 square miles, parcel of land in neighboring Henkin Island that hosts the University of Macau also falls under the regional government's jurisdiction. The territory's highest point is Kuln Alto, 170.6 meters, 560 feet, above sea level. Urban development is concentrated on Peninsula Macau, where most of the population lives. The peninsula was originally a separate island with hilly terrain, which gradually became a tombolo as a connecting sandbar formed over time. Both natural sedimentation and land reclamation expanded the area enough to support urban growth. Macau has tripled its land area in the last century, increasing from 10.28 square kilometers, 3.97 square miles, in the late 19th century to 32.9 square kilometers, 12.7 square miles, in 2018. Cotai, the area of reclaimed land connecting Tpu and Kowloon, contains many of the newer casinos and resorts established after 1999. The region's jurisdiction over the surrounding sea was greatly expanded in 2015, when it was granted an additional 85 square kilometers, 33 square miles, of maritime territory by the State Council. Further reclamation is currently underway to develop parts of the Macau new urban zone. The territory also has control over part of an artificial island to maintain a border checkpoint for the Hong Kong's Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Climate Macau has a humid subtropical climate, Köppen-Kwa, characteristic of southern China. The territory is dual-season dominant. Summer, May to September, and winter, November to February, are the longest seasons, while spring, March and April, and autumn, October, are relatively brief periods. The summer monsoon brings warm and humid air from the sea, with the most frequent rainfall occurring during the season. Typhoons also occur most often then, bringing significant spikes in rainfall. During the winter, northern winds from the continent bring dry air and much less rainfall. The highest and lowest temperatures recorded at the Macau Meteorological and Geophysical Bureau are 38.9 degrees Celsius, 102.0 degrees Fahrenheit, on both the 2nd of July 1930 and the 6th of July 1930, and -1.8 degrees Celsius, 28.8 degrees Fahrenheit, on the 26th of January 1948. Demographics. The Statistics and Census Service estimated Macau's population at 667,400 at the end of 2018. With a population density of 21,340 people per square kilometer, Macau is the most densely populated region in the world. The overwhelming majority, 88.7%, are Chinese, many of whom originate from Guangdong, 31.9%, or Fujian, 5.9%. The remaining 11.6% are non-ethnic Chinese minorities, primarily Filipinos, 4.6%, Vietnamese, 2.4%, and Portuguese, 1.8%. Several thousand residents are of Macanese heritage, native-born multiracial people with mixed Portuguese ancestry. Of the total population, excluding migrants, 49.4% were born in Macau, followed by 43.1% in mainland China. A large portion of the population are Portuguese citizens, a legacy of colonial rule. At the time of the transfer of sovereignty in 1999, 107,000 residents held Portuguese passports. The predominant language is Cantonese, a variety of Chinese originating in Guangdong. It is spoken by 87.5% of the population, 80.1% as a first language and 7.5% as a second language. Only 2.3% can speak Portuguese, the other official language. 0.7% are native speakers, and 1.6% use it as a second language. Increased immigration from mainland China in recent years has added to the number of Mandarin speakers, making up about half of the population. 50.4%, 5.5% are native speakers and 44.9% are second language speakers. Traditional Chinese characters are used in writing, rather than the simplified characters used on the mainland. English is considered an additional working language and is spoken by over a quarter of the population, 27.5%, 2.8% are native speakers, and 24.7% speak English as a second language. Macanese patois, a local Creole generally known as Patois, is now spoken only by a few in the older Macanese community. According to the Government Information Bureau, 80% of the population practices Buddhism, 6.7% follow Christianity and 13.7% follow other religion. Folk practices are also common among the citizens. According to Pew Research Center, Chinese folk religions have the most adherents, 58.9%, and are followed by Buddhism, 17.3%, and Christianity, 7.2%, while 15.4% of the population profess no religious affiliation at all. Small minorities adhering to other religions, less than 1%, including Hinduism, Judaism, and Islam, are also resident in Macau. Life expectancy in Macau was 81.6 years for males and 87.7 years for females in 2018, the fourth highest in the world. Cancer, heart disease, and respiratory disease are the territory's three leading causes of death. Most government-provided healthcare services are free of charge, though alternative treatment is also heavily subsidized. Migrant workers living in Macau account for over 25% of the entire workforce. They largely work in lower-wage sectors of the economy, including construction, hotels, and restaurants. As a growing proportion of local residents take up employment in the gaming industry, the disparity in income between local and migrant workers has been increasing. Rising living costs have also pushed a large portion of non-resident workers to live in Zhuhai. Economy. Macau has a capitalist service economy largely based on casino gaming and tourism. It is the world's 83rd largest economy, with a nominal GDP of approximately $433 billion, $53.9 billion US dollars. Although Macau has one of the highest per capita GDPs, the territory also has a high level of wealth disparity. Macau's gaming industry is the largest in the world, generating over $195 billion, $24 billion US dollars in revenue and about 7 times larger than that of Las Vegas. Macau's gambling revenue was $37 billion in 2018. The regional economy is heavily reliant on casino gaming. The vast majority of government funding, 79.6% of total tax revenue, comes from gaming. Gambling as a share of GDP peaked in 2013 at over 60%, and continues to account for 49.1% of total economic output. The vast majority of casino patrons are tourists from mainland China, making up 68% of all visitors. Casino gaming is illegal in both the mainland and Hong Kong, giving Macau a legal monopoly on the industry in China. Revenue from Chinese high rollers has been falling and was forecast to fall as much as 10% more in 2019. Economic uncertainty may account for some of the drop, but alternate Asian gambling venues do as well. For example, Chinese visitors to the Philippines more than doubled between 2015 and 2018, since the City of Dreams Casino opened in Manila. Casino gambling was legalized in 1962 and the gaming industry initially operated under a government-licensed monopoly granted to the Sociedad de Turismo y Diversiones de Macau. This license was renegotiated and renewed several times before ending in 2002 after 40 years. The government then allowed open bidding for casino licenses to attract foreign investors, along with an easing of travel restrictions on mainland Chinese visitors. This triggered a period of rapid economic growth. From 1999 to 2016, Macau's gross domestic product multiplied by 7 and the unemployment rate dropped from 6.3 to 1.9%. The Sands Macau, Wynn Macau, MGM Macau, and Venetian Macau were all opened during the first decade after liberalization of casino concessions. Casinos employ about 24% of the total workforce in the region. Increased competition from casinos popping up across Asia to lure away Chinese high rollers and tourists in Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Nepal, the Philippines, Australia, Vietnam and the Russian Far East led in 2019 to the lowest revenues in 3 years. Export-oriented manufacturing previously contributed to a much larger share of economic output, peaking at 36.9% of GDP in 1985 and falling to less than 1% in 2017. The bulk of these exports were cotton, textiles and apparel, but also included toys and electronics. At the transfer of sovereignty in 1999, manufacturing, financial services, construction and real estate, and gaming were the 4 largest sectors of the economy. Macau's shift to an economic model entirely dependent on gaming caused concern over its overexposure to a single sector, prompting the regional government to attempt re-diversifying its economy. The government traditionally had a non-interventionist role in the economy and taxes corporations at very low rates. Post-handover administrations have generally been more involved in enhancing social welfare to counter the cyclical nature of the gaming industry. Economic growth has been attributed in large part to the high number of mainlander visits to Macau, and the central government exercises a role in guiding casino business growth through its control of the flow of tourists. The closer economic partnership arrangement formalized a policy of free trade between Macau and mainland China, with each jurisdiction pledging to remove remaining obstacles to trade and cross-boundary investment. Due to a lack of available land for farming, agriculture is not significant in the economy. Food is exclusively imported to Macau and almost all foreign goods are transshipped through Hong Kong. Transport. Macau has a highly developed road system, with over 400 kilometers, 250 miles, of roads. Automobiles drive on the left. Unlike in both mainland China and Portugal, due to historical influence of the Portuguese Empire, vehicle traffic is extremely congested, especially in the oldest part of the city, where streets are the narrowest. Public bus services operate over 80 routes, supplemented by free hotel shuttle buses that also run routes to popular tourist attractions and downtown locations. About 1,500 black taxi cabs are licensed in the territory. The Hong Kong's Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, opened in 2018, provides a direct link with the eastern side of the Pearl River estuary. Cross-boundary traffic to mainland China may also pass through border checkpoints at the Porters du Cerco, Lotus Bridge, and King Mao Port. Macau International Airport serves over 8 million passengers each year and is the primary hub for local flag carrier Air Macau. Ferry services to Hong Kong and mainland China operate out of ferry terminals such as Po Ferry Terminal. Daily helicopter service is also available to Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Phase 1 of the territory's first trail network, the Macau Light Rapid Transit, began operations in December 2019. That Per line connects 11 metro stations throughout Po and Cotai. Healthcare. Macau is served by one major public hospital, the Hospital Condes Januario, and one major private hospital, the Kiangwu Hospital, both located in Macau Peninsula, as well as a university-associated hospital called Macau University of Science and Technology Hospital in Cotai. In addition to hospitals, Macau also has numerous health centers providing free basic medical care to residents. Consultation in traditional Chinese medicine is also available. None of the Macau hospitals are independently assessed through international healthcare accreditation. A Western-style medical school was opened in Macau in 2019 by the Macau University of Science and Technology, with an annual intake of 50 students. Local nurses are trained at the Macau Polytechnic University.